Alright, I'm Randy German. I'm here with Kenco Outfitters, and today we're going to do a fly that I have another video out on that we didn't do step-by-step instruction. We kind of sped it up. So we're going to do the elk hair caddis, and I use a gold wire rib, so wire ribbed caddis. That's the main ingredients you're going to need here. Clearly is going to be elk. You could use different types of elk. There's natural elk as well as bleached elk as well as cow elk and every kind of elk you could really imagine. I just use the traditional elk hair. Alright, so the elk hair caddis, obviously, besides the elk hair, you're going to need some kind of dubbing. I prefer to use a nice caddis green. It's a type of dubbing that is good when wet. It gets darker. So as a dry, when you see it bone dry, it kind of looks a little bright. But as you get into it, you'll realize it's actually not that bright. So first things first, we're going to tie in the gold rib. I do not have the gold rib tied in for the full length of the shank. And the reason for it's a dry fly. I'm trying to keep as low profile as I can without sacrificing durability. Alright, so I like to measure around the hook for accuracy, and then I'll shred a bunch off the barb, and you'll notice when I do the barb, I do wrap the barb all the way down the hook on this one. And the reason for it, again, is symmetry of the fly, just to make it a little more symmetrical. You want it diagonal to the hook shank and sticking kind of up and out like a feather out of a hat almost, because you're going to palmer wrap this back. And what that means is we kind of put it on an angle as we wrap it. And that angle will kind of splay the hackle slightly forward or slightly back, depending on the direction in which you palmer the hackle. That looks pretty symmetrical. Alright, now we're going to use the dubbing. So on this one, I do like to wax the dubbing. The reason I like to wax it, being a dry fly, it will actually shed water better when waxed. There's different caddis green materials you can use. There's darker colors, lighter colors. This one's going to be slightly on the lighter. It's kind of it's a hare's ear mix, essentially. And it comes out pretty nice. I've used this for years, and it's always worked very well for me. Again, it's a rabbit fur again. It's a finer rabbit fur. It's not a hare's ear or anything like that. So it doesn't come out as buggy. But with the caddis, I really don't want it as buggy. I want it to be a little more formed and symmetrical. And that way, when the hackle wraps through, it looks smooth and even. And you don't really want to taper the body on this. You really want a nice flat body. And the reason for it is most caddis flies don't really have a tapered body. So if you look at a caddis fly, it's okay to have a little taper, but if you look at a caddis fly, they don't have a tapered body. It's a straight bodied insect. Yeah, that's right, a little heavier right there. So that's really all the dubbing you need. Just a basic covering of the hook. It's just giving you the base color. You can spin it just to make sure you covered everything. Yeah, we're good. Alright, so now the gold rib comes last, and first you palmer the hackle forward. So to palmer the hackle, just like when you wrap your wire, you want a diagonal angle going towards the eye of the hook in kind of symmetrical wraps. So if you watch, the angle gives you a very symmetrical wrapped fly, and it makes all the hackle go in the direction that you intend it to go. Go right to the end of the dubbing, secure the hackle down, and you're going to want to trim off anything sticking forward. Okay, so now we're making a nice base for when we do go with our elk hair. It's going to be nice and sturdy. So before I wrap the wire, which is probably the most technical part, I'm going to cut the elk hair. So this is just a patch of natural elk I bought here in the shop, Kenco, in Kingston, New York, and it's made by Orvis. Well, it's not made by Orvis, it's made by Mother Nature, but Orvis sells it. And it's a good quality elk hair. I've used ones that are not so good and ones that are better than others, and this is a good upper end elk hair. I mean by that, it seems to has a good buoyancy to it. And a little fact why I stack this is cow elk, that is a female elk, actually have a thicker, slightly thicker hair to them, which actually has more air and less density. So what that will give you, and if it's labeled specifically that, it will give you higher floatability. With this fly, I don't necessarily want higher floatability. And knocking your hearing is me simply stacking it in my hair stacker and getting ready for the next step. So I'm going to wrap this gold thread through the actual palmered hackle. And the key to this is a jigging motion you're going to see me do. And that jigging motion threads the wire through the hackle. So I use wire for a couple reasons why I do this. And one is the wire gives it a little added weight, which one gets it a little more in the film. And I think the biggest problem with some of the caddis flies, and if you're getting a lot of rejections in particular, this is why it floats way too high. And fish are a little skeptical of things that are dead on the surface. So sometimes if you have a high floating caddis, you can do something called skittering. And skittering a caddis is how a caddis releases its eggs onto the water. So that's one technique of fishing it. But with this, with the gold thread or copper thread, will do for you is it will give you a little weight toward the bottom of the fly and let the wing do all the floating. So what you end up getting is a fly that sits just in the film, but is still easy to see, and you'll get more strikes, in my opinion, depending on the conditions, of course. So the next step is attaching the elk hair. And besides the threading of the wire, it might be the hardest part of this fly, and I think many people would say, well, definitely it is the hardest part of this fly. And putting on the elk hair has been giving people fits for as long as I've been tying flies. It is something that comes with a little bit of practice in terms of, one, knowing how much you need, and two, knowing how to measure it. Measuring it probably the most important part of the elk wing. If it's too long, it's unrealistic. If it's too short, it's unrealistic. I don't know if the trout care so much as human beings do, but we tie flies for human beings, I think, not for flies. Not for trout, sorry. So then I've stacked my hair. You'll notice it comes out nice and straight. It has a few small fibers, maybe a backward fiber or a fiber that broke off naturally in the elk's life that you might need to remove. There you go. I think I got all of them, or most of them. The fish aren't that picky. So when I measure, I go just beyond the hook shank. And the reason for it is when this ties up, it's going to flip upwards. Now I cut before I tie, and the reason for it is simple. It makes it uniform. It makes the head completely uniform. And if you cut after you tie down, there's no way the head's going to be uniform. I guarantee you, it won't be uniform. Alright, so a couple loose wraps just to get it. Start pulling it tight and you'll see the head start splaying. Alright, that's what we want. Oh, look at that wing casing. That's a pretty one. So what I like doing is I flip the head up a little bit, right? And just so it doesn't free spin, so I have room to work with it, I like to secure it just below the eye. Or a little tight to the eye, but this will work just fine. So now I'll push a couple of the head fibers back and do a wrap actually in between the head fibers. And the reason for that is it gives you two tension points onto the head, so you have a better secure head to the fly. Alright. So that's that. And that fly is just about done. Now you can put a half hitch into it. You can do a whipped finish, whatever you prefer. I don't have a pen or a half hitch tool with me, so I'm just going to half hitch it using my scissors. Alright, put a little bit of head cement on that thing and she is ready to go. Alright, this is Randy with Kenco Outfitters, and thanks for watching.